To trope or not to trope? That is the question. And whether you choose to behold its merits, align its purpose, or disavow its petulance and codify its moroseness, one will be drawn for all time. Conversations will be had, and its sacred keeper, the one AF Stewart, may reside over this procedure, but make no mistake, it is you, the Horde, playing judge, jury, and executioner, and while civil tongues will prevail, the question remains, even if sullen by blood, is it time to answer the call to trope or not to trope?
Okay, welcome to our season finale episode of Trope or Not To Trope. And if you're over there on Facebook, be sure to send us a star, be entered in the giveaway, and do all the nice stuff that is currently written on the screen there. So, tonight, we, as a season finale, we are tackling perhaps one of the more polarizing tropes that are out there, the chosen one. You either kind of love it or hate it, this particular one. And David Green is our guest, and he will be arguing for the trope. I will be arguing against the trope, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. So take it away.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I didn't realize this was the season finale as well. It's very exciting to be on the last one. And what better one to talk about than the chosen one? So I am David Green. I am based in Galway in Ireland. I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, and cozy fantasy. And I generally don't have a lot of chosen ones in my work, and often kind of poke at it and kind of look at it and invert it. And in fact, once I did set up what was hopefully people were thinking this is going to be a chosen one, and then killed the character. So so there's that. But I think most tropes. I think there's always fresh takes on them, and there's always, when done well, there's good fun. Most of them. There's some tropes that I think should get in the bin forever, but no.
Yeah, we've already done one of those, and I'll be mentioning that particular one tonight in some of the points. But anyway, but it's kind of odd that you don't do chosen ones, because I've actually done some chosen ones, and I'm arguing against this one.
Yeah, I mean, I do have an idea for one that a series that is going to be like heavily about chosen ones in terms of, but like looking at the role of the chosen one in terms, instead of like being like, here's a chosen one. So I do think it is quite fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. Most of my chosen ones are kind of reluctant. Chosen ones, though, they're trying to look for ways to get out of being the chosen one. So.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, and my latest one, the Tales of the Norse God Loki Saves the World, is actually a chosen one trope in some respects. He's a very reluctant chosen one.
Well, they're the best ones sometimes, right?
Yeah. Okay, so my first point, and this is actually one that I found on the internet, and I totally stole it for tonight's episode. So, and it's an interesting one that I thought, though, it's because that a chosen one, being a chosen one, it literally does not matter in for the plot of the book, because a non-chosen one could still be written and you'd still have a plot. It's basically set dressing, an excuse for the MC, the main character, to be special, and it gives the character permission to go on an adventure. It's basically just fantasy fulfillment for the author and the reader. So what do you say about that particular point on the chosen one?
Well, I think there's probably a bit of truth to that. A lot of it is kind of by design, isn't it? So a lot of times when you'll have a chosen one, it'll be like some kind of prophecy that needs to be fulfilled, or it'll be some kind of heritage, or it'll be some kind of something that someone has been primed for all of the time, from an early age. And a lot of that is obviously contrived from the author. Like it's all, just like it's a set of circumstances that they set on. And I think with that, I think you can't really kind of escape the fact that a lot of the chosen one tropes comes from coming of age. I mean, a lot of it, you look at the really classic ones, it is mainly boys becoming men, and their whole arc of being a chosen one is like an allegory for becoming an adult and stepping into adulthood and gripping your destiny and all this kind of lovely masculine stuff that we men need to go out into the world and stake our claim and take what is rightfully ours and what have you. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I don't think I don't think you can really escape it. I think it is part of the trope. It's baked into it. Can you have a similar character do the same arcs and have the same kind of purpose of taking on the quest and I think you can absolutely, but I think it's how compelling you make it. I think with the chosen one, there is that wish fulfillment is quite powerful for a lot of people. In terms of like a lot of the times the chosen one is quite a blank canvas for the reader to project themselves onto, and that wish fulfillment really ties into that. So so that character becomes compelling without actually being all that compelling. And like in modern times, you do have twists on that, where you have like anti-chosen ones, you have reluctant heroes, and so on and so forth. That there's a bit more to them that people can kind of sink their teeth into. But yeah, I think it's just an inherent part of the trope, and it is one of the reasons why there has been a kickback against chosen ones in recent times, because of the way that it is pretty much teenage boy wish fulfillment, and I don't think there's a lot of escape in that.
Yeah, that's why a couple of my chosen ones are actually women, and older women at that too. So yeah, so that is kind of leads into the second point, is that the chosen one is very tried and true, but it could also be classed as old and stale. It's a walking cliche that's been done to death. So why use it?
Yeah, well, I think in the classic way, there's a lot. It isn't used as much. I think in the kind of classic way that we kind of think of, like, and I mean, I think it kind of had its heyday in the 70s and 80s in terms of fantasy that way, and it wasn't just in fantasy books. It was in Star Wars is a great example of the chosen one, of the hero's journey, of that classic Joseph Campbell of structure. And I think a lot of people that were using it were people that grew up watching that kind of thing or being immersed in it, and when they were going to creative writing classes or screenwriting or stuff like that, they were learning mostly the Joseph Campbell story structure, which is very, very centered around the chosen one. So it's what they knew. And obviously you can graft it onto a lot of different types of stories that you want to do. So there is that. But I think in like more in kind of modern terms, there's different kind of looks at it. And I think there was always kind of like a want to do it. I remember I'm a big fan of Wheel of Time. And one of the original versions of Wheel of Time was Rand was going to be still the chosen one, but he was going to be an older character. He was going to be basically what Tam 04 is in the books. He was originally Rand. He was going to be an older character that went off to war and came back, sort of like parallel towards the Vietnam, I suppose, as well. But the publishers and editors were like, no, you need a younger character because it's young people that read these books, and they need to be able to see themselves in the book. So there is that. I think there's a lot of kind of pressure, I think, for market expectations and who it was that were reading these. And I think as that has changed over the years, and now you have different voices that are writing and exploring fiction, you're getting different types of chosen ones from different types of backgrounds that might not be readily seen as a chosen one. You might be getting, older characters. You might be getting characters that are not necessarily um, on the ascendancy to become like a monarch of some kind or anything like that. It might be a different type of chosen one. And you also get the ones that are reluctant chosen ones, as we've mentioned. You get ones that are actually have the opposite path to a chosen one. Kind of think of someone like Kylo Ren in that kind of, or what seemed to be what was going to be his storyline until it was changed in the Rise of Skywalker, where it seemed like he was, the anti-chosen one in a way. So there's interesting takes on it, I think, and I think that's great. But I would say there's not a lot of the classic chosen one takes around as much as they used to be.
Yeah, I think like Buffy was probably one of the more prominent, not typical chosen one tropes that came into that particular, like Buffy the
Yeah,
Vampire Slayer,
yeah,
because she was a chosen one, but definitely not the regular run of the mill
yeah,
one.
yeah. Well, I think what's something that we both enjoy is Supernatural, and they kind of did
Mm,
that a little bit. Whereas like Sam was kind of seemed to be the chosen one, where it turned out that he actually was chosen by the demons,
yeah,
it was going to be like the vessel for Lucifer, and it was kind of an interesting take on it. And as that show went on, Dean became the main character who was also kind of a chosen one as well in a different kind of way as well, like the vessel of Michael. But it turns out that all the angels and demons are all just terrible, terrible entities anyway.
yeah. I mean, and then by the end of the show, they were kind of both the chosen ones because
Right.
they were God's little characters.
Yeah.
They
There
were
was
basically the
yeah.
characters in God's book. So yeah.
They were, yeah, and like they were what descendants of Cain and Abel and stuff like that. So it's an interesting kind of spin on it where you have like two chosen ones essentially, and but they're both looking to um fulfill different types of the role, I suppose, for different types of people. I think I don't really like mentioning him all that much, or his wife, because of obviously because of reasons. But Eddins did that with his Belgariad one, where you've got like Gary and is like the chosen one for good, and then can't remember the name of the bad guy in it now, the one who's asleep for the first 4.5 books in the cave, but he's the chosen one for the dark prophecy. And there's this, so there is interesting things that you can do with it, I think.
Okay. So another thing that kind of bugs me about the chosen one a little bit is that it always seems to be some sort of ordinary person that's the chosen one. It's like the common peasant or the poor orphan or the poor something. I mean, they never seem to get the chosen ones from another walk of life, like a businessman or a successful merchant or something. I mean, they never get to be the chosen one. It's always the downtrodden that have to save the world. So
Yeah.
that's something that bothers me about that trope. I mean, not that the poor people shouldn't save the world, but, but I mean,
Well, the thing, yeah.
equal
Well, the thing is as
opportunities
well,
here.
the kind of downtrodden and kind of the poor people it always is revealed that they have some secret past of some kind where they're
Oh yeah, yeah,
actually
the secret heir of
yeah,
the kingdom. Yeah.
yeah. Where if it was just like they were just some person from the lower rungs of society and they stayed that way but were still the chosen one, I think that'd be quite interesting, where it's like they don't quite ascend to that kind of level. But I think that is just that kind of wish fulfillment thing again that comes into it, that's quite inherent. And it's, I mean, a lot of it kind of goes back, I mean, you can go back centuries for this kind of stuff. You look at the French versions of the Arthurian mythologies, the original Celtic and Welsh ones, or I should say Celtic and Welsh because the Welsh are Celts. But the original kind of stories, he was a folklore hero from Wales, and there's various back and forth about whether he actually existed or if he did exist, what he actually was. But when it was Frenchified, this kind of rags to riches tale of a chosen one was grafted onto it.
Yeah.
So it's something that goes back, thousands of years probably. Like there's probably stories before that did the same kind of thing, and I think it's just because of that. I think I think you can't underestimate the role that of wish fulfillment has with this trope, where it is that kind of this ordinary person. It turns out that they're actually the secret heir of the world, right? And they have all this kind of stuff because it's one of those things that everyone at some point in their lives has probably fantasized about it. Even if you read fantasy or not, or if you're familiar with these tropes or not, you've probably had at some point, you've had a falling out with your parents or your siblings or friends, and you've gone home and you're in your room and you're like, what, wouldn't it be great if I found out I was actually adopted and it turns out that actually I'm the successor or the heir to this thing, and I think that kind of really ties into it. And I mean, it's a very, very kind of human fantasy, very, very human desire that we can all kind of understand. So when you kind of see someone do that, you're rooting for them straight away. But a lot of the more famous examples of heroes that we have in fiction are not that. So like I kind of think of Frodo Baggins, for example, is a chosen one in a different kind of way, and he's someone who is a reluctant chosen one. He's someone who is very, very middle class in terms of hobbit structure, and is very, very middle class by the end of it as well. He doesn't ascend to any kind of level of rulership. In fact, he rejects it. He doesn't want to be the mayor of the Shire. He doesn't want to even lead the army when it's against the rebellion against Saruman or anything in the Shire. He kind of wants to be quite a pacifist. So, and then obviously he leaves. He is to find peace elsewhere. And I think that's he's one of the most famous, and it's one of those things where I think it's one of the enduring things of the Lord of the Rings, where a lot of these kind of tropes get tagged onto Lord of the Rings of being like, well, it does this, and this, and it's like, well, actually it doesn't. It inverts a lot of these things, and it's like it's the things that followed it that kind of went very much like, well, there's a chosen one, and there's a mentor character, and there's this and this and this, and didn't really quite get the nuance of what was going on, I think, with that. So yeah, I think the ones that kind of really, really rise to the top are always the ones that are a little bit different, because they're more memorable. They do something, they take risks, and they last in the memory a lot longer.
Yeah, well, in Lord of the Rings, you can see a lot of Tolkien's war experience in those books too. So that there's a lot of the soldier, I think, in Frodo, like the ordinary guy who goes to war, is basically.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, they're enlisted and they have to go. They have to go and do their duty, and they come back changed.
Yeah. Well, in a kind of a way, a soldier's actually kind of a chosen one too, because he's chosen to fight for his country. But
right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like what are you chosen for? And that's what it's quite interesting when they do have a chosen one, and it's like they look at like, well, what does it actually mean to be a chosen one? Is it all a good thing, right? And that's a lot of. I think that's where the interest can lie in it, is where it's like where they look at like what is the impact of being a chosen one, that you're going to have to go on this journey or this quest, you're going to have to give up the life that you have, and what is the impact on that, on that person? Is it fair to put all this pressure? Imagine you being a person that is plucked from your life and said, if you don't do this, the world is going to end, and it's only you that can do this. Like, imagine the pressure, imagine what that would do to someone. And I think there's like very fertile ground there to look at that and to kind of really look at the psychology of it, which I don't think a lot of things have done. I think Lord of the Rings was one of the ones that kind of did. It touched on it in a way, but it's almost 100 years old now, so it's not in a kind of more in-depth kind of modern kind of way where we look at kind of psychology and mental health and whatnot. But I think there is something there that is very interesting to kind of look at the mental impact for the pros and cons of what it is to be a chosen one.
Yeah, that's actually one of the points I was going to bring up later is that so many chosen ones don't actually do that. They don't
Hmm.
look at the pressure put on the chosen one and they don't explore it. So you just answered that. Go and do
Well,
that.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
doing the
yeah. I
chosen
mean,
one.
that is the thing, though. I mean, that's I have an idea where I want to do that. I'm not going to go into it because I want to actually write it at some point. Um, and but it is a very, very like kind of hinging on like what it actually means, and that it wouldn't actually be about the main character. Wouldn't be the actual chosen one. The chosen one would be a side character, um, and you're kind of seeing this impact of what happens with this character. But I think again, I mentioned Wheel of Time before. I think Wheel of Time does a really, really good job at looking at that with Rand, with the depression and the mania um, and all the different types of mental stress that Rand is under from that series to the point where he becomes so um, manic that he's like, I'm just going to end this entire world. I've got enough power to do it. He's going to do it, and he doesn't. He kind of has this moment where like he realizes like hope isn't lost and whatnot. But it kind of really looks into that kind of psychology of like you would it would go to your head. If you're being told that you are like the chosen one and you are the one that can save the world and you're the most powerful and this and this, of course it's going to change you, and it might change you in very, very negative ways. Um, and it's how do you cope with that? How do you cope with that pressure? How do you cope with um, knowing that it's all on you, right? Yeah, I mean, I would go to pieces. I don't like to think that everything is all on me. I don't like to think that like my everyday life at home that my family are relying on me all the time. It's like it's nice that they can just go and do their own thing, right? If I wasn't here, that's cool. So just
Yeah.
imagine where it's like if you don't do this, that's the end of everything. Like and even still, you can still do all this sacrifice, do all these things, and it still might not be enough, right? And it's like how do you cope with that? So I think that's quite an interesting kind of. There's a lot of ground there to kind of look at, and I think there's things that I've touched on it, and it's I think there's a lot of um, really interesting storytelling to be told in those kind of areas. I think.
Yeah. 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 My two chosen ones ran away.
What's that? Sorry.
I said my two chosen ones to cope with the pressure by running away.
Oh yeah, well that's always a tactic that you can go with.
Of course, they eventually come back, but yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing that kind of bugs me about the chosen one trope sometimes is the automatic acceptance. They like the guy or the mentor or whatever comes swooping in. You are the chosen one, and there's no like no, I'm not. You're crazy. Go away. It's
Yeah.
like none of that. It's just like automatic acceptance. So how do you sort of work the acceptance if you're going to do the chosen one more realistically into the book? Do you think?
Well, I think it depends on the character. I think because I mean you've got that kind of. I mean, on the one hand, if you look at that and you look at someone who who accepts it straight away, it's like do they have delusions of grandeur just in general, right? And it's like, you know, imagine someone coming up to you and saying like you are the chosen one, and you're like, what? I always thought that I was. What kind of character is that? What is their personality like? That
A
could be quite.
narcissistic chosen one. Now that would be interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and that could be again an interesting take on it, and just to kind of be like, well, you know, who would accept that, right? And if that's the way you want to go with it, then just to kind of follow that to its natural end, I suppose. But I mean, it also depends on like, I think this is like how you mentioned before about the kind of uh, trope of it being contrived from as a story device. When you have all of these kind of prophecies that are around the chosen one, generally, it means that like the kind of acceptance thing is kind of people, including the chosen one, but with people around them, are more readily accepting of it. 'Cause it's like, well, we all knew there was a chosen one coming, and this person fulfills all of the aspects of the chosen one, and they have like the markings, or they have this, or they have that. and that is obviously a thing to kind of get the plot going, right, as well, to keep the story moving, because obviously a lot of the time with these kind of chosen one stories, they're epic stories, they're big stories, and if you kind of spend a lot of time dwelling on someone having to kind of prove every single time that they're the chosen one, it kind of keeps slowing things down. So I think there's that side of it. But the other side of it, of someone kind of rejecting um, the signs or their role. We do see that quite a lot these days, just in general. When the call for adventure is made and people reject the call for adventure at first, like your chosen ones do, but eventually it catches back up to them, and they have to do it. They have to go back to it in one way or the other, be that fate, be that coincidence, be that coercion.
Yeah, yeah, coercion
Yeah.
comes in twice in mine. So
Yeah. I mean, you could have that kind of like mentor character that's like, well, they don't want to do it, so I'm going to kidnap all their family and make them do it. Right? You could go in different angles with this, right? You could,
yeah,
and I think that's something that like Joe Abercrombie does quite a bit in terms of like kind of looking at these roles, and particularly in his first trilogy, the First Law trilogy. There's a lot of that where it's kind of looking at like very, very familiar archetypes and tweaking them, and it's almost to the point of satire, but not quite. And seeing, but also grounding them into being like, well, if this was really this person that really wanted to achieve this goal and would stop at nothing, they literally would stop at nothing to make sure that this chosen one is at this place at this appointed time. So what does that actually mean, right? So do they have to be a good character, um, and that's quite fertile. It's quite a good way of kind of like looking at things and kind of looking at these, playing with people's expectations and surprising people, and using that kind of shorthand of like saying to a reader, you know what this is. This is you understand the roles that this is. You understand the basics of this story, but we're going to go in a different direction. And I think that is quite an important thing to have as well, because when you build these big worlds and you have these big histories, which generally things with chosen ones do have, there's always like a big backstory because there's a reason to have the chosen one and whatnot. You don't want to overwhelm the reader straight away, especially these days where there's so many books and there's so many stories and there's so many that have been and there's so many that are going to be coming. You want to kind of ease the reader into it and have them kind of know, yeah, I understand this straight away. I can get on with the story. I can understand the characters and all this. So to kind of use these shorthands is helpful. But then it's doing something that do something interesting with it, right? Don't just use shorthand all the time. Don't just go with what we already have. It's like do something interesting. You've used that shortcut to get a bit of an advantage. Now do something interesting with it.
okay. So Joe says the thing about the chosen one that bothers him is they're usually the character who does the most whining about why does it have to be them.
That's definitely chosen one energy from Joe there.
Yeah, well, I gotta say, my character Loki, who's the kind of the chosen one, he does a little bit of whining, but mostly he's just swearing at the Norns because they're the ones who are forcing him into this. So,
Oh yeah. I think the opposite of this would be quite fun, though. I think maybe not the narcissistic chosen one, although that would be quite fun. But just the chosen one who's just like, I'm having a great time with this. I love being the chosen one. I love being on the adventure. I'm having the time of my life. I think that'd be quite interesting to look at as well.
yeah, that would be. So, after the acceptance, a lot of times the chosen one, they don't really get any agency. They just kind of go with the flow and destiny. And I don't kind of like it when they do it like that. So how do you avoid sort of that thing, do you think?
Well, I think it's when you're writing any kind of trope. I mean, I think it's really, really important to really understand it, and understand the why it's a trope in the first place, and the kind of origins of it, and the expectations of what the trope is, like how it's supposed to perform. And that's not just because you have to do the exact thing. I think if you wanna kind of deconstruct a trope or invert a trope, you have to understand it in the first place. Um, so I think that would be one of the things for anyone who's kind of looking to do something like this, that's kind of looking to give a chosen one with more agency and to kind of do something a little bit different, is really study the trope and really understand it. Um, and then you can break it, and know where to break it and when not to break it, because for as many people that don't like the chosen one trope, there's lots of people that still do, right?
Mm.
There's lots of people that brings them a lot of comfort, because they know what the story's going to be. So you kind of really want to be, unless you're telegraphing it straight away that this is going to be. And I saw someone do this recently with a book that came out that they called an anti-romantasy. With what that being was like, it was like a book about um, spice and sex and other things like that, but it wasn't a romance. It was more about kind of control and coercion and all this kind of stuff. And they were very, very set the stall out straight away, saying that this is what this book is about, right? Um, so you can do that, but you have to kind of really understand it. And I mean, there's obviously, I don't like mentioning Harry Potter very often, but there is something quite interesting there about the Chosen One, where it could have been Harry or Neville Longbottom, right? And it was
Mhm.
just the fact that Voldemort saw more of himself, more of a threat in Harry Potter, because there was more um, similarities between his background and Voldemort's, and so he chose him to fulfill that part of the prophecy, right? And that is quite an interesting take, because it doesn't mean that Harry Potter's got any agency in matters, but it's got the villain had agency, right? And you wonder, like, when Voldemort found out about the full prophecy, if he was like, "Geez, I really should have picked Neville Longbottom. It would have
I
been a lot easier."
I don't know. Neville kind of stepped up in the end there, so yeah.
Yeah. But like, so it's interesting with that, but with agency, yeah, it's part of that whole thing. Like, a lot of these chosen one stories do go into fate and destiny and prophecy, um a lot of them, then they get funneled because, like, well, this is meant to happen, and this is meant to be here, and this was meant to do this. But one of the things that you can look at is, like, who's writing these prophecies? Is fate real? Can fate be broken? Um, is the simple act of following these paths fulfilling the prophecy, or can you go against it and not do that? I think Joe's mentioned the Matrix, and
Yeah.
there is that. With that, there's a lot of stuff around the chosen one with that, where, like, um, the Oracle says that Neo isn't the chosen one in this life, and then he dies and comes back and is the chosen one, right? So it's like he still is, but he had to die first. And it's like a Jesus kind of thing of being resurrected and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So a lot of stuff wrapped up into it. But it also has that kind of thing where, in the second movie, when he meets the architect, and, like, the architect's like, "I've seen this simulation so many times, and you're given this choice, and you always do this." And then, like, he actually goes with a choice he uses, but succeeds for the first time, and then it's like you're in uncertain grounds of what's going to happen, and that's an interesting thing to do. You break the chain of prophecy or something like that, and see where the story takes you.
Yeah.
So I think again, there's a lot of things to explore with it.
Yeah, the Matrix kind of played with the Chosen One by turning it into, basically turned it into a machine program.
Yeah, he was
And
just he was Jesus for everyone, and
yeah,
he and
and,
he
and
and
Neo
it, yeah,
Neo in that instance kind of rewrote the program. He broke the code, and they
yeah,
had
he
to,
did, yeah,
yeah. So that was
yeah,
kind of an interesting flip on the Chosen One thing. So,
yeah, and they had the whole stuff with Agent Smith as well, which is like the kind of the flip side was, again, the kind of anti-chosen one that
mm,
kind of rewrote the Matrix in his own image. You know when it turns into Dragon Ball Z at the end, where they're both flying around the city fighting each other for a bit. Um, So yeah, so there's a few things they were doing that. I'm not sure they kind of really. I'm one of these people that's like the second movie suffers because the third movie is so bad, right? Because I think that the second movie set up so much stuff that it could have gone in really interesting directions, but then they chose the most like safe and dull options from the things that they set up with the third one, which makes the second one worse just because of the third one, right? And I think if the third movie had been like amazing, people have been like, yeah, the second one really set that one up, right? And it's so yeah, I'm not sure they quite hit on what exactly what it is they wanted to do with the whole mythos they'd set up.
Yeah, that's actually a good example of the next point, is the convoluted whys of being the chosen one. Because it's like the Matrix, they set the world up in the first one, and they set these questions up, and they sort of expanded on it in the second movie, but then the third movie just kind of didn't answer any of the questions, really.
Yeah,
I mean, it had some great fight scenes.
Or answered them badly as well.
Or answered them badly. So it's kind of like, it's like the whys were there, but we don't know exactly why. Maybe it was this and maybe it was that. It was like, yeah, you should have explained it a little better.
Yeah,
So I mean, that is a problem with the chosen one, though, is because people, they just go with the idea of the chosen one, but they don't really do the underlying whys of, why is this guy chosen? Why is it him and not someone else?
Yeah, I think there is some examples of where there's a specific reason why someone is a chosen one. So we've talked about Wheel of Time, we've talked about Belgariad, the Matrix, for example. I think there's the specific reasons why they are chosen ones, like and the different reasons as well. All three of those are different reasons. Like the Matrix one is because he has been created by the machines to be the algorithm, isn't he? Like, to kind of.
He said that the sequels created more questions we didn't need.
Right. Yeah. But I think. Yeah. I think sometimes. I mean, answers are difficult. I think just generally, it's always easier to start a story, because at the start of a story, it's all about possibilities, isn't it? And as you get closer and closer to the end, you're closing down the various different possibilities and you're giving answers and you're giving definitive endings. And people will, just because of the nature of people, we will speculate and we will imagine what these possibilities might be. And sometimes, particularly when it's something that's got a long amount of time in between things, you become attached to these headcanons and these theories and whatnot. So when you are eventually given an answer, might be a perfectly good answer. It might make absolute sense to what has gone before, but it's not your answer. It's not the one that you wanted, right? And so that's when you get a lot of people, and that's why endings are so divisive, because you are giving a definitive closure to something that is going to, some people are going to like it and some people aren't, and some people just don't like endings in general, and they are difficult. They're difficult to write and they're difficult to work. And the thing with answers is that sometimes answers are just very underwhelming, and it's why a lot of things don't answer everything. They leave things unanswered because that means they live on and people speculate. Like one of my favorite films of all time, I think it's a perfect movie, is The Thing. And John Carpenter's gone on record saying that he knows the nature of Childs and MacReady at the end, but he'll never say what it is. Which is great, because that movie, people still discuss it 44 years later. People are still watching it and going, I think I've picked up a clue in here actually, and it just lives on, and it lives on, and it lives on. And if someone was to come out, John Carpenter was to come out and just say, actually, neither of them are the thing's dead, people would be like, oh, okay. Right, that's a bit of a bummer, isn't it? Right? And which is why I actually think that is the case. That is my theory on it. But but I like to debate it with people. I like to talk about it. So I think like when you kind of have these chosen ones and you kind of have to do a lot of these kind of answers, sometimes just leaving it up as a twist of fate, I think, is completely acceptable because it's more interesting that way. Sometimes having a really, really thought out lore and all this kind of stuff is also really interesting, but you have to be on board of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that you don't necessarily need answers to everything, but even the non-answers, like the thing, have to make sense because that ending makes sense,
Right.
right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And
Of course.
that's the sometimes what you get with the chosen one is that the whys are so convoluted that they don't really make sense anymore. So you have
Yeah,
to
well,
watch
yeah.
that.
I think that's like simplicity sometimes. Sometimes I think simplicity, and I think this ties into kind of like theories and fandoms and stuff like that. And success, I think, is dangerous with this as well. You might have something that is very, very simple at first and very, very straightforward, and it works, right? And then theories get tied on top of this, and success happens. So you kind of keep writing in this world, and then you introduce a new plot elements and new characters, and then it's like, well, how do you make this relevant? You have to tie it back to its personal. So it's like, we'll have to tie it back into the main characters. And then it's like, well, actually, this character always knew about the nature of this person. And then you start tripping yourself up and you start having plot holes and you start having this. And then, you have like, oh my God, one of the worst series for this is Dune. And I know that like, uh, Frank Herbert's son, I think it's Brian Herbert, I think it is, and Kevin J. Anderson went back and did all the sequels and prequels, which are, I think, in my opinion, rightly maligned for being just the worst case of this sort of stuff, of just more and more layers and layers and layers added on before and after. But Frank Herbert was at it as well when he was writing them. You get up to like, I mean, I think the first three books are really good. I think the Diminishing Returns, God Emperor of Dune is absolute madness, and I love just how mad it is. But like his own books after that point are just this kind of just layers and layers and layers of just muddying the waters, making it all needlessly complex. And Dune at its core is a chosen one story as well. Like, Paul Atreides is a chosen one. Is he a good person? No, he's not. And because the first book didn't do a great job at painting that, he went at great lengths afterwards to be like, he's not a good person. Like,
Yeah. No one in Dune is a good person, though, to be honest.
Yeah. But it is, and the essence of what it works as a chosen one in the simplest terms in the first book, it works, right? You understand it. You understand how it has been this manufactured prophecy as well. That's like a measure of control, which I think is always an interesting route to go down, which is obviously what the Matrix has done as well, and other things that to look at this kind of way. And then with each extra book that gets added on, because there's the demand for more and there's demand for answers, it just gets more and more complex. So I think sometimes people need to just sometimes accept that a simple answer is fine, and sometimes the simplest answer is the best answer.
Okay, so Joe agrees with me that no one is a good person in Dune.
No, not even Duncan Idaho, who's got a great name, and he's also like, there's so many Duncan Idahos by the end of this.
Yeah,
they're all clones by the end of it. Have you ever read the last one?
I have not. I think I stopped at book 3, if I recall.
Oh,
I mean,
right, okay.
I have them. I just haven't read them.
The last one by Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert is like everyone's back. The Paul Atreides is back. Bloody Baron Harkonnen's back, and they're all clones. They're all Golans. They're all just hanging out. They're all having a great time.
Okay, that is going too far. No, I haven't read any of the non-Frank Herbert books. So yeah, but
yeah.
Okay, so and he says in regards to the thing, he has revealed the answers are there.
The answers are there, yeah. Which is a great way of getting people just to keep watching it and debating it and going, well, you know, there is this little bit where you know where this has happened and like someone does this. He's very clever, John. He's all about the residuals. He loves it.
Hmm. And he says Duncan is good-ish until God Emperor. So
Yeah, yeah.
anyway, so and another thing that kind of irks me, especially with this particular trope, is it's basically a murder magnet. All the chosen ones who are orphans. I mean, this trope has killed more parents than the plague, really.
Mm, yeah,
So
it has.
why
Yeah.
why are they always orphans, really?
Well, I think I mean that ties into the whole hidden past thing, doesn't it? Where, but again, there are exceptions. Randall 4 has got the best dad in fantasy. Samo 4 is a great guy.
Yeah, but
It's not
they
not his
kill
real
the
dad,
village
but
off, don't they, in the first book? I mean, I haven't read the book.
not really. They do in the TV series. They kill a bit
Oh,
more in the TV series than the book. There's a bit of a skirmish in the first book. It's not too bad. But Tam's all right. He's there right to the bloody end. Tam is. He's a great guy. But yeah, a lot of time like they are orphans because they have to have that kind of that readiness, I suppose, to leave a lot of the time.
this is
Whereas
true.
again,
The parents probably wouldn't let them go. These
right,
weird.
yeah. And I think it's that thing again. It's a more of a kind of like modern take where these kind of characters they do have ties to home, which they are having to sacrifice to do this stuff. It's more compelling, it's more interesting. But then I think it's that kind of thing as well where it's like it's it's difficult, I think, for people to, particularly when you want to root for someone straight away, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to leave behind all of my family and friends and go on an adventure," right? And just be kind of like, just go. There needs to be some sort of um, compelling reason why you're on their side straight away, and being an orphan is something that you can have sympathy for someone straight away. Um, Having someone in your background killed is compelling as well. And I think the biggest chosen one in Western society is Jesus, right? and um, and this is like I don't want to go on to if God is real or anything like that. I'm not making any kind of comment on that, but he is a chosen one, right? And he also had no earthly parents. One side of it, Mary was one of them, and God wasn't. It's the Immaculate Conception. He was a special birth, and I
Yeah,
think
but his foster parents or step parents or whatever you want to call them, they survived.
they were around for a bit, as far as we
Yeah.
know. Yeah, as far as we know. But
Well,
I mean, he
I'm
did all.
assuming they died of natural causes eventually, but I mean, nobody went and killed them off. So
I know it was like early AD, so people could die at any time and for any reason. And he did go off for a number of years, didn't he? He had his missing years where he went off went off preaching and went off on his own and all that kind of stuff. But there is that kind of thing where it goes back, I think, to that kind of storytelling thing of someone that has this difference about them, right? That they kind of overcome in some kind of way. And I think you look at the Arthurian stuff again. It's particularly the French stuff. Arthur's the same. He's an orphan, right? He's raised by Sir Kay generally, and it's always. But in that case, it's always made clear to him that he is not related to them, right? He knows that he just thinks that his parents are dead. He doesn't know that they're King Uther and whoever it is that they usually, whatever legend you go with. But it's and Arthurian legend, particularly in the Western, not even really, French stories, British stories, and then by extension of that, North American stories. It's really ingrained in a lot of our subconscious, in a lot of the way that we tell stories, because it was in England and Scotland and Wales and whatnot. there was always this harkening back to this mythical or legendary figure of Arthur, even from like the time of Alfred the Great. Would talk about this King Arthur, right, and be like, we want to evoke these times, and this would go on, like, and every so often one of the kings would be like, we want to be like King Arthur again, like, the Round Table and this kind of stuff, and that went over to North America. So and this kind of stories then were ingrained in us, in terms of, like, I think many people, even if they don't consciously think they know a lot about Arthurian myth and legend, if you said to them, what is King Arthur, they'll be like, oh yeah, gets the sword, he's the King of England, there's the lady in the lake. They would know the broad strokes of it, right? And I think that's one of those things, again, that shorthand that we kind of talked about before. I think it's never to be overlooked, just to kind of give that kind of shorthand and go, okay, well, there's a lot to process here. So we're going to have this chosen one, and we're going to give them the kind of a background that you're familiar with before we bring in all the different elements. And I think that is a large part to play in it.
Yeah, well, Arthurian myth is kind of a template, makes a lot of sense for that whole orphan thing. And actually, one of my chosen ones is actually Arthurian. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like, it's just such an enduring legend in our countries, for obvious reasons in like, the British Isles, and then obvious reasons in North America, because the amount of people that went over and founded and the pilgrims and everything, they would have been familiar with those stories, right? And we share a lot of cultural similarities. The Joseph Campbell hero's journey was kind of like, worked heavily off the Arthurian legends. So it's just something that it's a blueprint for a lot of the way that we tell stories for each other. And I think even if you go away from that, even stuff like, the Norse epics like Beowulf, they all have very, very similar ways of storytelling as well, devices. Because it's just, we want to, when we're telling someone a story, we want them to be engaged with it straight away, as quickly as possible. So a good way of doing that is to make them feel comfortable straight away and going, like, you know what the broad strokes this is, but then I'm going to give you something a little bit different. But the introduction, I mean, if you think of fairy tale, think of a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, like, every story and starts that way in Star Wars. It's like it's a storytelling device of being like,
Yeah.
we know this, we know what this is. So I think there is that. It's just a way that we tell stories to each other.
Yeah, well, I've long said the original Star Wars is just King Arthur in space anyway. So.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But chosen ones also tend to get pitted against very powerful beings, darkness and evil personified. And I'm kind of just like, I just like once to have the chosen one go up against something that's not that epic, like maybe an evil bunny or something. So.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's always life and death, world shattering epic? Or is that just the nature of the trope?
I think part of it is the nature. I think it's that kind of what the reason to give up everything that you already have to go out on this adventure, this call to adventure. It has to be pretty important in terms of that kind of story. Now, I mean, a way that I would kind of kick back against that in general is by suggesting to you that everyone is the chosen one of their own story, right? And the stakes are different for every person, right? So I like to kind of talk about this with cozy fantasy. So there's a lot of people that kind of will say cozy fantasy is low stakes, and I always say, no, they're not low stakes, they're personal stakes, because whatever is going on in that story for that character, it's the most important thing that's going on in their life at that moment. But it might not matter to someone in the same town. It might not matter to someone across the way, down the street. It might not matter to someone in the next town where there is a big dark lord and there is like this chosen one that we understand as being a chosen one, where there is this big battle going on. What's happening in this cozy story might not matter to them, but to that person involved in the story, it is the biggest thing for them, right? Um, and they are the chosen one of their own story, and the villain of the piece could be a politician, it could be a bank manager, it could be um, a real estate agent, it could be all of these things that are in the way of our chosen one um, finding achieving what it is that they need to achieve. So I think it's the way that we I think when people talk about the chosen one trope, it's that we are thinking of this big kind of epic fantasy or epic story, because you've got like, you can have chosen ones in horror, you can have chosen ones in romance, you can have chosen ones in different things, but they're usually big sweeping stories. I think and that's the nature of them when we think of this particular trope. But I think if you kind of look at it in a different way and go, well, the chosen one is the chosen. We have, as an author, we have chosen this character to tell a story about, right? And we could have chosen any other characters in this world to tell a story about, but we're choosing this one, and we need to treat them accordingly, right? And we need to kind of look at and scale what it is. What is it they want? What is it that's stopping them from getting what they want? What are their biggest fears? What are their biggest weaknesses? The same thing we do with every story, but we're scaling it towards what type of story that we want to tell. So your answer, where you want the villain to be a little like a grumpy bunny or something, you can have that, right? It's just that you just got to scale the story down to suit it. So I would say that would be my answer to that one.
And a very good answer, and some wisdom there. So, how do you avoid having a chosen one where the traits are just basically plot armor and they're never in any real danger because they're the chosen one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's quite difficult. I think it's something that you can kind of level at a lot of storytelling, because you choose a mate. So if you're writing a story that's single character POV, you're pretty much gonna know that character is gonna be there by the end of the book, right? You've chosen that character. The story is about them. They may succeed or fail in their endeavors, but they're gonna still be there by the end of it, by and large, right? If you start doing like multiple POV, you can kill off characters, you can do this, but there's still some characters that are going to be there all the way through to see the story end, because we're telling the story through the characters, and so there must be some characters that make it to the end, one way or the other. So I think there's always that kind of thing with storytelling. With a chosen one, it's a little bit more kind of that kind of criticism is a little bit more intense because it's more kind of, well, they're the chosen ones, so they have to get to this end point, right? They're going to get there one way or the other. But it's the way that you tell that story. They may get to the end point somehow, but what is the cost of getting there? What have they had to sacrifice? How have they changed? What have they had to give up? What is the cost of this journey? Death isn't always. We're always told this in a lot of these kind of stories. There are worse things than death, right? Well, what are they? Show us what they are. Have the chosen one go through those things, right? Make this journey really, really kind of make the price high for success, or to even get there, to face the end. And I think that's the way to kind of tackle it, because it's like the Hunger Games. The books are about Katniss. She's going to survive, right? Or at least get to the end. But it's like, what does she have to give up to get there? What does she have to sacrifice? That's the interesting thing. It's the journey not the what's that saying? It's the journey, not the destination. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. And I think that's the thing to kind of go show us the price that this has cost this character. I know Joe's made a joke about Tolkien there, but we see that with Frodo. Not really any of the other characters, to be fair. Like most of the characters in those books are archetypes, but with Frodo, we see the cost
Mm.
of what this journey has taken him. His body is permanently scarred. He is got PTSD, which was shell shock in those days, which is definitely from his experiences in the First World War. He falls ill on the same dates every year because of these toll that is taken on his body, and he basically has to leave and go to a land of death, basically of never end, which is where he goes to get peace, which is very, very bittersweet ending for him. And you see the price, you see the cost that he has paid to kind of do this. And I think that's the kind of way to get around that kind of plot armor. You know, is really make us see and feel this journey that this character has been on.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. So we'll do one more question because we're coming up on the hour here. So prophecy is always following the chosen one around, kind of like a little lost puppy. So how do you handle a prophecy and not give in to the temptation to adjust the prophecy to fit the plot?
I don't know actually, because what I like to do with prophecy, and what I like reading it, and I like to kind of do it, is to have a few different ways. Prophecy is a way of control. The prophecy doesn't change, but people's interpretation of it does. The context of it is different. I think it is always a bit of a cheap thing where it's like, oh, we were missing a line of this prophecy, and now we've uncovered it. There was actually an ending to this, and we never had it before. But I think the context of it is important, and and if people are doing it again, like in the Matrix, where it's like it's a method of control, like in Dune, where it's a method of control, and that's quite interesting. I think another way of doing it is just that the prophecy is just bullshit, right? And it's just lies. I think that is also quite an interesting, not even as a method of control. It is just a pack of lies, and it has been done for whatever reason, and then you kind of look into it, go, what is the reasons for this? Was it hubris? Was it ego? Was it a joke?
Bad translation.
Bad translation. Yeah. So there's that kind of thing where you can like look at that as well and go, what is the origin of this prophecy? And I think another interesting thing as well is to have a prophecy and not to change it, but then have characters that are actively trying to go against this prophecy, and to see if they can break it, if they can bend it, if they can change it, and see just how kind of fallible this prophecy is, how malleable it is, how robust it is. I think that's quite an interesting kind of thing to look at. I think some places do kind of like conflicting prophecies as well, where they'll have like a good version and an evil version that's slightly different, and whatnot, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, or both of them are true at the same time.
Yeah, actually, one of my works in progress is playing with that. There are two different versions of the prophecy, and both of them are true.
Both of them are true. Yeah, like
Yeah.
Wheel of Time does that. In the first few books, it kind of stops doing it after a while, but it has these like it introduces these dark prophecies, and they're like, well, aren't these contradicting the good ones? And it's like, no, they're actually both true. Like it turns out that they're both true, and it's all down to interpretation and context and translation in some points. But yeah, I do think it is a bit of a cheap out when it's like, oh, we found a different part of this prophecy. Like who knew there was another line here. It's like, well,
yeah. I think another cheat out is when you have the self-fulfilling prophecy. Because I don't really, because I mean that's just like, oh wait, if the villain hadn't actually done and tried to kill the hero, the prophecy wouldn't have been fulfilled. It's like,
Yeah. I don't know. I think that can be quite interesting sometimes because that's like your point about agency earlier. That is quite an interesting thing to look at. Like, if the chosen one is proactive and is like, well, I'm going to go and fulfill these prophecies, and it's bringing the conflict closer. What would happen if they just refused to do it? Would the conflict still move closer? Would someone else step in to fulfill them? If the prophecy is real and it is like part of the tapestry of the world and it has to happen, and the person that has been chosen as the chosen one refused to do it, would fate ensure that these things were made? Would they just make someone else the chosen one? Would that I think so? I think there is something there as well that you can kind of look at. But I just think with any trope, it's the execution of it. I think there's tropes. There's only a handful of tropes for me where I'd be like, absolutely not. No, we're past these tropes. We shouldn't do them anymore. There are
yeah,
ones that I'm like, they look a bit tired and whatnot. I think the chosen one possibly is in that kind of thing, but I think a chosen one story done really, really well, with executed brilliantly, is still a good story, I think. But there's lots of room to tell a different type of chosen one story, which I think I would like to see more of. But I think people stay away from it these days because they're kind of like, people are finished with the chosen one, and it's like, well, maybe one type of chosen one story, but there are other types that you can tell.
yeah, I definitely agree with that. And one of those stay away from tropes that's actually attached to the chosen one, and that's the instant fighting skills trope. Don't use that one.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. My one is Phrygian, which can also
Oh yeah, that one
sometimes
too.
tie in with a chosen one. Yeah, I
Mm,
think that one is just,
yeah, those
it's
poor parents.
always,
The
yeah,
poor parents are always fridged.
parents, wives, sometimes children. It's like, well, here we go again on another adventure. My wife is dead. I need to go. It's like brilliant.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap the episode up here. I'd like to thank you for being a guest. It was a wonderful chat. Let's see, close off the season. So,
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
okay, that's it for this episode and the season. And we will be back in September for season 2. So watch out for us coming back. And remember, it's always time to go indie now.